Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how are you doing today?
You know, I was having a wonderful, wonderful week until earlier this week. I loaded my podcast app, and what came up?
What?
An episode of the Buckeye Slipcast, one of our beloved partner podcasts on the Ozone Radio Network. And the title of the episode was Grilling Gerdeman. And I thought, is this a cooking episode? What could possibly be going on here? So I start to listen, and whose voice did I hear on there, Gerd? I heard Jared, our wonderful favorite host on their show, always. But Kyle wasn't on there. Who else was on there, Gerd, with our friend Jared?
It was me. I didn't want to do it, clearly. It was a favor.
What were you thinking? You weren't thinking. Clearly. Do you know what I did?
What?
I dug my keys into the side of your pretty little souped-up four-wheel drive.
Did you really?
Carved Buckeye Weekly into your leather seats. Took a Louisville Slugger to both headlights. Slashed a hole in all four tires. Maybe next time you'll think before you go on another podcast.
Anything to keep you from quoting, is that Taylor Swift?
You know, I don't know. Is
it Casey? I don't know. I don't know who that is. I apologize, Tom. I should have checked with you first, but I didn't want to because I knew what you would have said.
That's tough but fair, yes.
But this is an opportunity for me to do a podcast without having to do any preparation. So, I mean...
Yeah, when do we do that?
I mean, no preparation. Yeah. This is just me showing up and then, doing stuff. I mean, anyway, what? Anyway. So, Tom, what's going on this week? Ryan Day contract extension, is that big news?
It's pretty big news, yeah.
You know, pretty good job by Ryan Day last year. Big Ten Coach of the Year. First time since Earl Bruce in 1979. So when that happens, as was decreed by the country's forefathers, you get a contract extension. And so he gets a new 6-year deal that will pay him $5.375 million this year.
Correct.
And then $6.5 million next year. And then $7.6 million in 2022. And at that point, they're like, let's just chill and see if he's actually this good or maybe better.
And, this seemed kind of like a fair contract for him to get, because I got to say, based on last year, I'm not sure that the new head coach of Michigan State, Mel Tucker, had earned the right to make more than Ryan Day, or like $1 million more than Ryan Day. So this seemed like something that was probably worth exploring. And Ryan Day's first year in charge of the Ohio State program could not have gone a whole lot better than it did. And, it's easy to say, well, he's just coasting on the fumes of the Urban Meyer era. But if you can keep the Urban Meyer era going in Columbus without Urban Meyer being the one who's in charge, that in and of itself is a skill that's would make you in demand across the country. And I think that, looking forward now, the 2021 recruiting is off to a fantastic start. I mean, there's nothing that suggests that the train is slowing down at this point. So,
in fact, Tom, it may even be picking up.
Yeah.
No flameouts. You had the 2016 against Clemson, 2017 against Iowa, 2018 against Purdue. There was none of that last year. You wouldn't expect to see any of it this year, but you never expect it.
Yes.
And that's why it hurts so much. But yeah, Gene Smith should have simply said, like in the release, Mel Tucker is making 5.5. What did you expect us to do? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, clearly the going rate, and I mean, this is the winner's curse. Like, the person who bids the most is always going to get the person. So, you're incentivized to be the crazy person who gives a guy with 5 career wins a $5.5 million contract because you're crazy and desperate and in a terrible spot. But that's what people are getting right now. And it's real hard to argue with that Ryan Day did not bring $5 million or more worth of value to the Ohio State football program last year.
Well, he signed a base salary, or not a base salary, because the base salary is tiny compared to all of the media stuff that gets added on. But it was $4.5 million when he signed. Originally, Urban Meyer came in at $4 million a year in 2012. So, and Urban left at around 7.5?
Yeah.
Something like that. So Ryan Day's third year will be 7.6, which is $100,000 more than Jim Harbaugh is going to make this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other sort of.
Do you think that was a coincidence, or? Because Harbaugh won't be making 7.5 in 2 years. He might be making more. He might be making less, but it's
might be employed elsewhere.
Perhaps Michigan State.
If man, if Brett Bielema at Michigan State was going to be the funniest thing we'd ever seen, Jim Harbaugh somehow jumping to Michigan State would be.
That would be fun.
You can't see me doing the chef kiss right now, but rest assured, I am doing the chef kiss right now. Yeah, it's real hard to argue that Ryan Day did not provide more value to his program than Jim Harbaugh did last year.
Well, we could embrace debate on that all day long.
That his results were perhaps not superior to those of Jim Harbaugh last year. That Jim Harbaugh may be coasting largely on name recognition and inertia and a fear of change in Ann Arbor. But yeah, I have not seen any of the outrageous accusation that this is simply outrageous, that Ohio State the priorities are way out of whack. Like, Ohio State football makes a ton of money, supports 36 varsity sports at the school. Like, they're doing that because the program is successful. If the program is successful, just pay that man his money.
Well, I think Day was 7th among Big Ten coaches last year, and this deal probably this year and next year. This year probably makes him 4th or 5th, no better than that.
Right.
James Franklin will make, he just signed a new 6-year deal. I think he makes 5.4 this year, and then it increases all the way up to 6.5 his final year. But, right now it appears like this is, not only is it's almost below market, so how do you complain?
Right. Well, Greg Schiano got an 8-year, $32 million contract at Rutgers, which is, technically a member of the Big Ten, but it's not. That is not a Big Ten football program, and they're paying their coach $4 million a year. So Ryan Day making 20% more than that, or a little more than that, is well within the bounds of fiscal responsibility in terms of Ohio State.
Yep, and then this deal will last as long as I would say Day's first national championship, and then you tear this one up and give him a new one. Just like I think that would probably be what has to happen.
Yeah,
because like this was as close as you could get to a national championship almost, and they got torn up. So now you have to show it. Now you've got to earn this contract, and it has to be with by meeting, I think, your expectations at least once.
Well, and there are a whole bunch of changes that are coming in the sport one way or another, in terms of growth of the playoff, in terms of a lot of conferences having their TV deals coming up in the next 5 years or so. When that stuff starts to kick in, that's probably going to start to change the kind of baseline number that all of these athletic departments are operating off of every year. Those numbers have been trending very clearly in one direction. And it's just going up every year. So I think that's a reasonable expectation that will continue. So, when some of those numbers kick in, you may see significant jumps from a lot of different programs.
So that's Ryan Day's contract, which is a fair contract. Tom, now I want to talk about some recruiting. We are eventually going to start previewing this spring, the Ohio State defense. We'll get to that. But first, there's commotion and disaster brewing up north, so we need to discuss that.
If you think that's something that our audience would enjoy, I guess we could.
Yeah, exactly. And what this entails is West Bloomfield, Michigan running back, 2021 running back Donovan Edwards the number 3 running back in the composite right now, number 33 player. 24/7's own rankings have him as the 22 player. And the number 2 running back, which would put him in 5-star territory. Either way, he's in 5-star territory right now. Tom, a couple of crystal balls have come in for Ohio State from some key 24/7 people, and Steve Wiltfong and Alan True. Alan True up in Michigan, knows everything that goes on up in Michigan. Steve Wiltfong is the Midwest guru and doesn't really put in, when he puts his crystal ball in, that's when a lot of other people take notice. And so you got both those guys putting their crystal balls in for Donovan Edwards to Ohio State, when a couple weeks ago it seemed like Michigan was, he would ultimately end up there. 5'11", like 190-ish running back, kind of maybe a little Michael Wiley when I'm watching the highlights. Plays some quarterback as well, some receiver. We'll have to put on a little bit of weight, but number 3 running back, Michigan, there's still a long way to go, but this is a guy that Michigan can't lose. And right now there is panic going on, at least among the Michigan fans. We know Michigan coaches don't panic.
Well, they haven't had a recruiting meeting to actually know what's going on.
Right. They don't really emote anyway, so panic is an emotion. It doesn't fit. But the fans are not happy right now, nor should they. Tom, your thoughts?
This is a kid where if Michigan can't get him, it's probably like real serious time to evaluate how things are going, because he's from West Bloomfield, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit, one of the nicer kind of northern suburbs of Detroit. His high school coach was a varsity football player at Michigan. So, if someone in that situation he's probably half an hour or so from Ann Arbor, high school coach certainly should seem like he's predisposed to, whatever his input is, his input would likely be, hey, what about Michigan? If you can't get him, that's a real, real, real problem.
Well, you mentioned the former player being the coach. How many guys, when you watch, you don't watch the NFL, but when the Michigan players introduce themselves on Sunday night or Monday Night Football, they always refer to their high schools rather than the University of Michigan.
Or Lloyd Carr's University of Michigan.
Where it's like they don't carry on the same necessarily love for the university. But again, as high school coaches, if you're serious about it, you put your players in the best. You don't necessarily steer them to your school. You steer them to the best opportunity as they should. But now you've got Kerry Combs on the situation as well, planting flags in Michigan, which is not going to help the Wolverines at all. And we know Ohio State needs 2 running backs in the 2021 class. You go out and get this guy, maybe an Evan Pryor or somebody else like that. There's a couple of good ones in Ohio, but maybe they're not quite Ohio State caliber. And it looks like, if Ryan Day gets Donovan Edwards, that's another Ohio State victory over Michigan.
Well, you look at it and it's like, why would a kid from Michigan whose head coach played at Michigan, why would he want to go to Ohio State? It's like, well, okay, what has Ohio State done recently with running backs? Well, J.K. Dobbins just ran for 2,000 yards and is projected as a potential first-round pick, at worst, early second-round pick. They are beating Michigan thoroughly, consistently, and decisively every single year. They are winning the Big Ten every year. They're going to the college football playoff a decent amount. And Michigan is not developing the talent that they have. The system, the offensive system, the whole speed and space thing, I think at this point, my assumption was okay, second year, this is when potentially you're going to see an uptick in recruiting. And then the system just kind of didn't do what it was, what all the talk was that it was going to do. It wasn't modernized. It was just kind of and now here's the Michigan offense again in a slightly different package. And, there's a lot for Michigan to overcome. And, he doesn't seem like he's one of those kids that just wants to go to a different part of the country. That was something that Court Williams talked about, the Ohio State safety. He grew up in California, but he wanted to go somewhere else for college. I mean, that's how I was. I didn't want to stay in the Northeast. I wanted to go somewhere else for college. Doesn't seem like that's it with Donovan Edwards. he's not talking about going to a different part of the country. He's just talking about not going to Michigan or looking at not going to Michigan. And he, from all indications, he's not like imminently going to commit anytime real soon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he's going to kind of let the process play out. But, Ohio State's in on enough of these kind of top guys, whether it's Trevion Henderson from Virginia or Evan Pryor from North Carolina. These are all top 100 running backs. If they get one or two of those, like that's what they need this year. They need to pick up a couple big-time running backs. And there is an opportunity there. Not only is the situation better, but there's also kind of an opportunity because they only took one running back last year, the year in Mayan Williams. And, there is a gap on that depth chart where you could come in and second year potentially maybe be a starter.
Yeah, the whole I saw one on Twitter. A Michigan fan was angry. Like, look at what Mike Weber did. Why would anybody want to go play running back at Ohio State? Look, he drafted in the 7th round or not at all or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, he still rushed for 2,000 yards in his career, and Ohio State still had the number 4 pick in the 2016 draft at running back. They're going to have a 1st or 2nd round pick, I assume, in J.K. Dobbins. So they do. Carlos Hyde, rushed for 1,000 yards just this past season or the season before. It's like, well, there's kind of some evidence, some testimony there, as Urban Meyer would say, that not so bad to be an Ohio State running back.
Well, and if you're a 5-star or borderline 5-star prospect from Southeast Michigan, do you think Donovan Peoples-Jones might revisit his decision if he had it to do all over again? I mean, he went to Michigan, one of the top 10 players in the country. Urban Meyer and Kerry Combs very famously drove through a snowstorm to go visit him. They desperately wanted him. He chose Michigan instead, plays 3 years there, and it was like, it was fine. I think he probably had a 500 or 600 yard receiving season. He turns pro, not someone who I've seen projected as a 1st round receiver. I mean, you look at what someone like Garrett Wilson might be as a pro in a couple of years. Like, do you think Garrett Wilson is probably going to be more than like a 3rd-ish, whatever round pick? Like, yeah, probably. And you got to go to do some overseas trips. Like, yeah, okay, that was good. You got to go see glorious Orlando in the Citrus Bowl. That was exciting. But, I don't know if the testimony is there for Michigan the way it might be for Ohio State and some of the comparable guys. Yeah,
you even look at Rashawn Gary, Jabril Peppers, who ended up being 1st-round picks, but what did they really become?
Well, Rashawn Gary was ranked ahead of Nick Bosa, and then look where they ended up after their career. Nick Bosa goes ahead of Rashawn Gary, has championship rings, has all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I mean, this is one where the inclination will be someone must be the Ohio State bagman. It's like actually.
It's the NFL bagman.
Well, yeah, there's a lot other than getting that bag that might be playing into that decision.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tom. Do you want to get into the spring preview of the Ohio State defense now, which is basically just like 10 listener questions?
I think we should.
That will allow us to then talk about everything.
Good.
Let's do it.
First one from Indiana Buckeye. What did Coach Kerry Combs learn in his 2 years in the NFL that immediately helps the Buckeyes fall 20?
He learned to teach his cornerbacks to turn back for the ball, Tom. And that's it. That's all he learned. That's all he needs.
That's my understanding is that's all there is.
That's all there is to playing cornerback is look back for the dang ball. But yeah, he talked about seeing so many different defenses under Dean Pease where you learn so many and you can't implement all of them in college. But when you have this wealth of knowledge, you then also have this wealth of understanding of, well, this would work here, or we can do this, or because we don't have a slot corner up to Shaun Wade standards, maybe we need to do this instead. So he just brings in more options, more knowledge, more things he's seen. And just as Jeff Hafley did, I mean, we didn't know what this defense was going to be. And for crying out loud, they started 3 corners, and sometimes Pete Werner was a deep safety. Like, did we ever talk about that happening last spring?
No, I don't believe that we did.
Oh, so that's on us. That was our fault.
Yeah. Next one from Board at Work. We don't hear much about Jerron Cage. Is he progressing to get playing time?
Tom?
He was on your pre-spring depth chart as one of the potential nose tackles. Tommy Togiai is going to start there. And then it's Antoine Jackson and Jerron Cage. And those are two guys who are in very, very similar boats right now, where Antoine Jackson has 1 year of eligibility left. Jerron Cage has 2. But both of them came in, and it was like, all right, well, this is a pretty big, this is someone who's going to be an impact player at Ohio State. And then, not yet. Mm-hmm. So one of them is going to end up stepping up almost certainly. There's not someone else who came in as like a true nose tackle this spring, where it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely going to be someone like, Tommy Togiai, when he came in, it was like, yeah, that guy looks like he could play right away. And I don't think there's anyone who's, gonna be in that spot. There's a lot of like the 3-tech guys and the defensive ends, but not.
Yeah, I think the interior, basically you've got 6 guys, and that's really not a lot compared to what we've been used to. Now, Antoine Jackson played a little bit last year. Cage played even less, but they were behind Devon Hamilton and Robert Landers forever.
Yeah.
Their entire career has been behind those guys. But now is the time. But yeah, you went through the nose tackles, the 3-techs, which would be Haskell Garrett,
Teron Vincent,
and Jaden McKenzie, and maybe Darian Henry Young.
Yeah. Or Jacoby Cowan, maybe.
And the thing, when we talked to Cowan on signing day, he's only been talked to, they've only talked to him about defensive end, and maybe sometimes sliding inside on passing downs. Darian Henry, he seems like the guy maybe more likely to me, but I think that's one of the questions maybe later on, but the depth there isn't what we've come to expect. But yet the guy behind, like Haskell Garrett, is the number 1 defensive tackle in the 2018 recruiting class. So you would expect that you don't need to go 3 deep at each position just because you have been able to in the past. You rotate the top 2 guys, and then with the Rushman package, maybe more defensive ends play on the inside, and you take a nose tackle out then anyway.
Yeah. But to go directly to the question, is he progressing to get playing time? Yeah, answer foggy, ask again in 3 weeks, and we'll see whether he's kind of made a move a little bit this spring.
Yeah, is he the number 2 anywhere, or is he competing to be the number 2? Or and we'll see more beginning on Monday.
At Buckeye KY, any chance the D-line can be better than last year, at least as good? Lack of a second edge rusher hurt at times last year, and the best compliment to Chase was Hamilton. That'd be Devon Hamilton, not Ty Hamilton. I think combo of defensive ends and defensive tackles could be a better unit even without the individual dominance of Young.
I'm going to go negatory here, Tom.
They lost a lot. Chase Young is the one that gets all the attention, but Devon Hamilton was real good last year, and Robert Landers was a very consistent contributor, and Jashawn Cornell was a very consistent contributor.
I think Tommy Togiai is going to be really, really good, but Devon Hamilton last year at the nose was a complete disruptor. You had 2 guys, Chase Young and Devon Hamilton, who couldn't be handled one-on-one. Now, this year, how many guys do you have that have to be doubled? Maybe none?
We can see how Zach Harrison progresses as he goes. Maybe Jonathan Cooper can turn into that. I don't think he's there right now.
Yeah, and this is a question I had on a podcast we won't mention that you were upset about earlier.
Thank you for bringing that up. I had forgotten.
Who does Jonathan Cooper remind you of? Is there anybody?
In terms of historical Buckeyes or current?
As a defensive end, as an Ohio State defensive end. Because that was a question I had. I was like, for one, it's hard to look at him without seeing what he hasn't become.
Right. Yeah. There's
So who would you get? You don't really compare guys who have fallen short to other guys who have fallen short because those guys kind of go away. I said Thaddeus Gibson, if he could become that this year.
Yeah.
Because he's not been there yet, even though he's a guy who started in front of Chase Young in 2018. Mm-hmm. He is always in the lineup if he is able to go. You just don't see the sacks and the numbers, but he does everything else. But
Yeah, I mean, the name that popped to my mind when you said Thaddeus Gibson, I thought Robert Rose, maybe? I mean, where you sort of saw flashes, but it wasn't there consistently. Maybe that's where he is right now with the opportunity to, if he's healthy for a full year, take that next step. I mean, Robert Rose came in with, I think, a similar level of hype to Jonathan Cooper, so,
Yeah.
maybe someone like that, but yeah, there's not, it's hard because I feel like there's a lot more to his story that we haven't seen yet. Like there's, I just remember last year, talking to you about how, this is finally Jonathan Cooper has the chance to take this next step and live up to all of his potential, and then got hurt, couldn't play.
What about Nathan Williams? Nate Williams.
Yeah,
he was a guy who
Nate
dealt
Williams
with a
is
lot of
idea.
injuries.
Yeah, Nate Williams is a good.
But even he was more productive than Cooper in terms of stats.
Yeah.
Now Cooper was probably the more sound player and did everything that the coaches wanted him to do outside of tackling the quarterback. But yeah, I mean that's a difficult comparison when you've got a guy who is still waiting to become what he is supposed to be. And as I said on the Sloopcast, it's you know this, like every time you talk to Cooper at the beginning or the end of a season, all of the questions are like talking about how he hasn't become what, just the disappointment in your career and how do you deal with that. And so hopefully this will be the last spring that he has to face those questions. And then of course they'll come back up in the fall, fall camp, and then maybe he can put all of those to rest.
He's just so unique because he came in with the hype and has just with the injuries and just the depth. I mean, he just hasn't had the opportunity to really show. But at the same time, he's done so much off the field in terms of leadership. I mean, he is one of the, I don't know if revered is the right word, but one of the people who is really, really respected in that room by players and coaches. One of the guys who always has a good attitude, always does it the right way. And he hasn't gotten the opportunity on the field to live up to it yet. And, he's someone where you would hope that he gets the chance to really do that this year. Cause, it's in there. Like he has the opportunity and the ability to do it. If he can stay healthy and put it all together, then that can be, a solid season this year, second year as a team captain, that can really vault you into a nice NFL payday at some point too.
I think if the defensive line is healthy, that would help. Just the defensive ends, because everybody got hurt at some point last year. But I do think maybe they're deeper this year because all of the young guys are a year better. And yes, last year they were still like Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Zach Harrison both started games last year, which really shouldn't happen at Ohio State, where you're starting a true freshman for one, and then Javonte Jean-Baptiste when there are other guys ahead of him, but there are so many injuries, and Tyreek Smith and Tyler Friday both missed games, and so
Chase Young missed games. Jonathan Cooper missed most of the season.
The question is, like, are these defensive ends injury prone? Like, can you get a whole year out of Tyreek Smith or Tyler Friday? I think that's a question we don't know yet. I expect them both to be good. Zach Harrison, we both agree, should be fine. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and you still have Noah Potter, Cade Stover. There are more guys coming, but it's still a deep group of defensive ends, but I can't put them up there with last year's group because of, I like how deep. Last year's group was also very deep because they were able to go, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Zach Harrison were able to play, and Zach Harrison was in there from the get-go as part of that rotation. But if you remove Chase Young and Devon Hamilton from anything, you're worse off.
Yeah. I mean, and they could potentially by the end of the year be that good, but
and they could be the best defensive line in the Big Ten. They should be.
Yeah.
But last year that's a tough ask.
Yeah. Next one from at OSU Defender. Do you think Baron Browning will split time with Tuff Borland, or will he get a shot at Malik Harrison's old position, which would be the will backer? I
think this is one of the things everybody's wanting to see this spring. Where does, just the first time we see a defense line up, where is everybody? Will Baron Browning and Tuff Borland be on the field together? Maybe it just depends on who steps up at will. Now, we know they'll go with the three best linebackers. And is that Browning and Borland and Werner? So do they fill those 3 spots? What if they decide Pete Werner maybe should play the will?
That I was looking through the roster, and did you happen to notice what Pete Werner is listed at weight-wise now?
242, I believe.
242 pounds. That is a lot closer to a defensive end for Ohio State than it is to a safety. So I looked at that and I thought, I wonder if they might be looking at sliding him to will and then have someone else go into that same spot.
He's arguably your best linebacker, and the will involves a lot of tackling, so maybe he goes there. There's just so much. You ask us questions about the linebackers, and it's like we could talk about it, just like last year.
Yeah,
we could talk about it, and we can't give you any answers. We can just give you more questions.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many guys there that are just immensely talented. Guys like Taraja Mitchell and Kayvon Pope and Dallas Gant, who've been here for several years, and we still don't, you still don't really know. Like, you've seen a little bit, and it's like, oh, that's encouraging. Like, that guy's going to be something at some point. But they've just had so much depth there that those guys have not gotten consistent enough run to really know what you have and to go, okay, that guy's skill set maybe fits in better at a different position, or maybe he's more likely to slide somewhere else. And we'll see more this spring. I mean, obviously first practice, if they're doing any kind of positional anything, that's next Monday, the 2nd of March. We should get a chance to see some of it, but yeah, I'm real intrigued there because there's so much possibility there and so many different ways things could sort of shake out that I'm real intrigued to see who is starting where, and then as guys shift around throughout the spring, like how things are kind of shaping up.
Yeah, and we as we've mentioned before, the Will and the Mike, they want those 2 spots to be interchangeable, which just brings even more confusion and possibilities there.
Smooth transition to our next question from Smartwater. Who makes the coaches say he's got to play? Pope, Mitchell, Gant? Can Hooker or Hickman, that would be Marcus Hooker or Ronnie Hickman, make OSU seriously reconsider their base alignments and philosophy?
The coaches always talk up Dallas Gant. He's a guy kind of like the way Pete Werner was always talked up. But when there's so many guys in front of you, like how do you get on the field? And I know there was also some comments, I think, in these questions. I don't know if I included them, but basically, like, why does Borland have to keep starting? Why can't, why do they stay with him?
We'll get there.
Oh, okay. Is that question from me?
No.
But, I think Kayvon Pope showed with 2 interceptions last year. When you're making plays like that, maybe you should get a little bit more of an opportunity. I still remember Al Washington talking up Taraja Mitchell at the coaches clinic last year about how he didn't always go the right way, but he always got to the right spot. So that's one of those guys who makes plays, and then, just you have to find a way to get that guy on the field because of those plays. Same with Kayvon Pope, but there's so many guys. So how do you, like, if you only get 15 opportunities and you make plays on, 2 of them, and the other guy gets, 40 and they make plays on 4, and I don't know, Tom. I don't know. Who among, like, any of those linebackers, like Craig Young, crying out loud. I mean, he could be a bullet. Who knows if there is still a bullet, but,
he's fast enough. He could be the next Darren Lee. I mean, and that's the Will side. I mean, that's
a guy who said, I have to play. Like, they had to get him on the field.
Yep. So we'll skip a couple and go right down to...
Wait, what about the Hooker and Hickman?
Oh, Hooker and Hickman, yes. Hooker and Hickman certainly could make OSU reconsider their base alignments. I mean, the way that Ohio State's going into spring and what Kerry Combs was told when he talked to Ryan Day was OSU wants to keep that one high defense. So you have that one high safety. Last year it was Jordan Fuller. This year I think the presumption is it's going to be Josh Proctor. It's possible that Hooker or Hickman, if they're going to be sort of that second safety, maybe that strong safety or box safety, that they're so good that they are better than, whoever the third corner would be. That's absolutely possible that they change that. It's also possible that if they're not comfortable enough with Proctor being the one high guy, that you have to go to something else. Because Jordan Fuller allowed them to play one high last year because Jordan Fuller never missed tackles. So there was like, well, there's one guy to beat. Well, they're not going to beat that guy because he's Jordan Fuller. Can Josh Proctor play at that level? Maybe. We don't know. We haven't, we've seen Josh Proctor look great. We've seen Josh Proctor look not that great. And he's going to have another year of reps and reps with the ones, so that'll help. So he's going to be a different player in September than he is right now or than he was in the Fiesta Bowl. But there are a lot of things that can make OSU revisit that one high philosophy. That's what they want to do, but they're also smart enough to know you shape the system to your players, not the other way around.
Yeah, but at Ohio State, you should have the players to play whatever system you've designed and that you want.
Oh, look who forgot the 2018 defense. Oh, look at this.
But even that, like seeing them put Isaiah Pryor in the wrong spot as the slot safety, the strong safety, where he would have to, handle KJ Hamler type of players, and that was not ideal there. But also he was also as the last line of defense as the deep safety, he also struggled. Isaiah Pryor did. We don't need to go back to that. But I was going back and looking through something from last year, and Ronnie Hickman, I think it was Matt Barnes, was talking about Ronnie Hickman. Even though he couldn't play because of his ACL injury, he was studied. He answered every question in the meeting rooms. He was the first guy to answer all of the questions. So he's got this unique understanding and ability to learn where maybe he moves right away into like that too deep because, Tom, as we know, his nickname is
Rocket.
There you go. And so, as you said long ago, if your nickname is the Rocket, you're fast and you should be able to play. And, but again, it still comes down to, can you tackle with that last line of defense? Can you cover with that slot corner? And, we'll find out.
At Mr. Mr. Mike 42, Borland not starting would be good. That's not a question. Sorry, that's not phrased in the form of a question. Do not read that as endorsement or non-endorsement. Does Marcus Williamson get a shot at nickel corner?
And we know Kerry Combs is the guy who recruited Marcus Williamson. We still have pictures of them together from Friday Night Lights. Loves Marcus Williamson, and he's got that slot corner build where he's smaller and able to move. Sean Wade does not have the slot corner build.
No,
but he was very good at it. And you're looking for the guys who are more like a slot receiver. And he is that probably, I think they maybe list him at 5'11", but that means 5'9.5", So we'll see. He has to stay healthy. He's a senior now.
Right, which is amazing. There are a couple guys on this team that are like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Already?
And like the three linebackers, with those guys being juniors with Pope and Gant and Mitchell, that's outrageous. It's a travesty.
Yeah,
preposterous.
There are certain guys where you're like, how is this guy? How is JT Barrett a 17th-year senior? And then you've got guys, Marcus Williamson, Jalen Harris. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? Already?
Exactly. Like Jack Miller, a junior.
Maybe. So we'll go back up to our question from our least favorite reader, Langdon Olger. Who are the two bullets?
Tom?
Trick question. They don't actually use the bullet. It's a myth.
Obviously, if Pete Werner stays up to Sam, he's one. But, who is his backup? Is it Craig Young, who played safety on the scout team? Is it Justin Hilliard, who I think was listed? And he played a lot in the four linebacker sets, which, gosh, maybe there'll be more of simply because there are no safeties that they trust, which would not be a good thing. But, who, in that first initial depth chart, who are the two bullets?
I think there's a possibility that Court Williams earns his way into that spot at some point, maybe this fall. I don't think we'll see him in the top two this spring.
Although if it's a position that doesn't play, then you can put a freshman there. Maybe it is Craig Young and Court Williams. And,
yeah. I mean, I would think that probably. I don't know. Hilliard is just kind of like a mystery to me. You know?
Well,
he's been hurt. Was it last year that he ruptured his Achilles, or was that 2 years ago? That was last year, right?
Last year.
So, he didn't. I don't think you looked at him necessarily and thought this guy can fly last year, but he wasn't healthy. He'd ruptured his Achilles in the spring. So, how does he look this spring? Maybe it's faster. I mean, 2 years ago, Tough Borland did not look like he could play at the Big Ten level, and then last year, Tough Borland had a perfectly fine season because he was healthy. So if Justin Hilliard can stay healthy, maybe that's Justin Hilliard's spot. But
do you think that is any way to keep him, like from transferring and going playing somewhere else? Because it's like last year they gave Brendan White here's this fake $20 bill. It's called the bullet.
Mm-hmm. You can pay the players with fake money. That's a federal crime, not an NCAA crime.
And so then Brendan White goes and tries to spend his 20. Nobody will take it. And so then this spring they look at Justin Hilliard and go, here's a 20. Mm-hmm. You are now the bullet. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I've seen the story before.
Why does this 20 have a picture of Greg Schiano on it?
Yeah, so there's only one place you can cash that in.
Where's that?
That would be at Rutgers.
Okay. Next one from at LBCOSU. Who do you think will be the starting outside corner opposite Wade, and who is in line for the nickel corner? I mean, at this point, it's probably either Cameron Brown or Seven Banks is the guy on the opposite side. I feel like those guys were pretty much even last year. Like there wasn't one of them that was consistently coming in ahead of the other guy. So
there was one time where somebody went down and Seven Banks was the guy to go in. Mm-hmm. There was another time where Damon Arnett was out, and so I think Cameron Brown started that game. Mm-hmm. So there are different times throughout the season where they were each the next guy in.
Yeah.
Which, is a good sign for this year. But yeah, it's
flip a coin.
Exactly. And then is nickel corner, are they talking the safety slot safety, or are they talking the third corner out,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Are they going to go with, the nickel corner is, if it's not the slot safety, then it's just whoever the other outside corner is slides inside. So,
and that's another thing we'll find out. Kerry Combs wants this rotation to continue, but does the rotation just keep them on the field all the time at the two corners and the slot corner, which doesn't really give them a break and asks them to do way too much?
Yeah. There's just a lot of different ways that could shake out right now, and we have absolutely no information that we did not have other than Amir Reep is not in this competition anymore. We have learned absolutely nothing since last fall when we looked at it and went, yeah, it could be either of these guys.
Yeah.
One name we haven't mentioned is Tyreek Johnson, and Tyreek Johnson was clearly kind of a step behind those other guys. He has the pedigree. He came in as a 5-star prospect. He has a very good rapport with Kerry Combs. Maybe this is what it takes to get him to finally live up to some of that potential. But there's just, until we see it on the practice field and sort of see, when we say see it on the practice field, I want to be clear. We generally don't see enough reps to make an informed decision by ourselves, but we can see who's running with the ones, who's running with the twos, who's running in the slot. The coaches are the ones who have a pretty good sense for who really can do what. We can figure out just by watching what the coaches think, and then that informs our decision as well better. So, now next one from at Zalexan. Who do you project to start at defensive back? Hoping to hear good things about Proctor and Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah, I just read that and went, Antoine Jackson? No.
All right.
Yeah.
Tyreek Johnson, maybe?
Could be Johnson. Yeah. Who do you project to start at defensive back? I'll say Sean Wade.
Okay. All right. My next pick, then I will go Cameron Brown. Mm-hmm. And then who do you pick at free safety?
I'm going to say Josh Proctor.
And I will go, this is maybe the biggest question is that slot corner just the guy who loses the other outside corner spot? Mm-hmm. And if that's so, then you have to have those freshmen step up, or Marcus Williamson and Tyreek Johnson step up and become the Cameron Brown and Seven Banks of last year. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to be those guys, because those guys played a lot last year. And if they're both on the field this year, then you need to have depth behind them. I wonder, can one of those guys do that? Be the slot?
Maybe.
Good answer, Tom.
Yeah. All of this stuff is like, these are all fantastic questions and
really good questions. Wish we could answer them.
Ask again in 2 weeks. Like we can give you best guesses right now, but it is literally a coin flip between some of these guys.
And that's kind of the way it was last year as well. And just in terms of not even knowing what to expect or talking about what it could be.
Yeah, and there's so many different moving pieces where what they do in terms of the, third corner kind of position, or that could be dependent on how Josh Proctor looks as the deep safety. So it's like there's so many variables.
Because if he doesn't look great, then you need to put another safety back there with him, and then there is no third corner.
Right.
And then it's
so there's so many variables here that we will start learning next week. We haven't gotten there yet.
Now, I will say, Von Bell was able to play the slot corner. That's what Kerry Combs always called it. I think back in that defense, that was considered the falcon or the free safety. And the deep safety was actually the strong safety, the post. So you can, a safety can do it because Von Bell did it, but he was an All-American and a second-round draft pick. Is that Marcus Hooker? Is that Ronnie Hickman? Is that, Tyreek Johnson has safety size? Is he able to do that? I think maybe that's asking a little too much of him right now. Mm-hmm. But as Combs said, you start them outside and then you move them inside as they can't play those positions. If you're not really good at outside, move them inside. And now that there's an inside place to move somebody like Tyreek Johnson to, maybe he gets a look there as well.
Yeah, there are enough pieces that this, they will all fit together somehow. You're going to have certain guys who just don't quite pan out, but there are enough guys there with high enough recruiting rankings and a good enough coaching staff that this will all sort of sort itself out over the next 15 practices and then again in the fall. So I don't think this is a point of concern yet, but it's a point of confusion probably at the moment.
I think we've almost answered this next question.
Yeah, the next one is from at @let's_go_Bucks. Understanding the return of Wade was huge and losing Chase will sting. Is Josh Proctor's replacement of Fuller the most important factor for success of the defense in 2020? I say yes.
I kind of agree. I was asked on a podcast we won't mention the biggest concern, and it's the secondary. And I think it doesn't necessarily start and end at free safety, because we also saw what happened when you have a guy that can't play slot corner. When Sean Wade went down, there were some issues. Mm-hmm. But the entire defense hinges on that last line of defense. Yeah. Your entire style in the secondary, in the back seven, hinges on this guy making tackles. And we saw Josh Proctor have some issues there. But again, he's entering his third year. Just as Malik Hooker was, his third year was when he stepped up as a redshirt sophomore. Obviously, Proctor will be a true junior, but it's not unheard of for players to, need that time. And it's a difficult position to play. Not everybody can play it, as we've seen from players failing it. And, I kind of get annoyed when people think Jordan Fuller didn't do much or because he didn't have a bunch of interceptions. But he was the key to the back half of the defense. Yeah. And if you don't have that key, then like you said, can you even go with one safety? Do you have to go with two? And it causes a lot of questions, and you have to find a fix in other places as well. Because if he's your best deep guy, and nobody else can, if nobody else can be that last line of defense, or nobody can be that last line of defense, then you need two. And
yeah, that deep safety spot is almost like being a long snapper, where if you're not noticing, don't worry about the stats. If you're not noticing them and you're just kind of oh yeah, that guy, that means you're great.
Yeah. And long snapper is another thing that we should probably discuss at some point, because Liam McCullough went 4 years of perfection, maybe the most perfect Buckeye of all time. I may have said that on this show before. And now you're replacing him. Mm-hmm. Now it might be with his brother or whatever. Yeah. But that's 4 straight years of no issues at that position. Mm-hmm. And don't overlook that or don't undersell that. And if you start getting some bad snaps, get on Twitter and bash that guy.
Do not get on Twitter.
Oh,
That
yeah,
guy.
yeah, no, don't do that.
Next one from Matt. LOSU1. Any true frosh going to start in the secondary? The answer to that is always, I sure hope not. That's not... Anytime you have a true freshman starting in the secondary, that's generally very bad news. That means you either have no depth or you have major injury issues or something. That's one of the spots where it generally takes at least a year, maybe 2 years of development before someone's really ready to play at the, what is generally accepted as the Ohio State level. You think about all the guys who, I think we've talked about Gerdeman Conley and Marcus Lattimore, or Marshawn Lattimore, not Marcus Lattimore. Different player. Different player, different school, different position. Marshawn Lattimore, Gerdeman Conley, like those guys turned into great players, but you can go back and, if you want to search, Gerdeman Conley's name during, was it the 2014 Michigan State game?
As a redshirt sophomore? Or was he a freshman at that point?
Might have been a redshirt freshman, but this is a guy who turned into a first-round NFL draft pick, and it was like, oh, this guy can't play at all.
Eli Apple had to come back onto the field, who started the game injured. That's why Gerdeman Conley was in the game.
Yeah.
And they're like, Eli, you can't be so hurt that you aren't better than this guy.
What if you got better now?
If there was a true freshman to start this year in the secondary, who do you think it would be? And the Bullet is a linebacker.
The Bullet is a linebacker. Oh, I was going to say Court Williams, because, see, this is you being a jerk.
I saw the thought cloud above your head.
Ryan Watts. I'll take Ryan Watts as a corner, and, maybe he's the slot corner.
I would say Legend Cavazos as the slot corner.
Yeah.
Just because he's a unique athlete with a huge vertical. He's fast. He's quick twitch. He's got the quick shuttle. Yeah. And he's big enough. He's like 6'1", 190.
And it has to be someone who's in for the spring. Like that's,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, that narrows it down a little bit already. So, yeah, sure. You took away my actual answer, but, sure.
You're welcome.
If any, no disrespect to any of them, but if you see any of them starting, that should be like, this might not be great. Like, maybe it'll be fine.
Yeah, because they're probably not, like Derek Stingley from LSU.
Yeah.
And you can expect the quarterback to start throwing the football near his direction if there's a freshman in there.
Oh, yeah. Especially
starting right away. Just like that 2014 game. They went right after Gerdeman Conley, who wasn't even a true freshman.
Yeah.
They just knew he didn't belong.
Yeah, well, Amir Reap was in the Fiesta Bowl for all of 2 snaps before Clemson went after him and scored a touchdown.
Exactly.
The offensive coordinators are paid a good bit of money to know where the vulnerable points are. So,
like Pep Hamilton, he always knew when John O'Corn was throwing to the wrong spot as John O'Corn was throwing it.
Last one, we don't have a name on this one, but what are the chances OSU looks to the portal for corner help with not much proven depth beyond Sean Wade? I think the answer is looks to 100%. Finds help there, lower than 100%, because, there's no one out there. I looked at this a little while ago, and there was no one out there that was like, oh, yeah, that would be a great fit. The person who I was thinking, and I think I might have even just gone, well, this makes too much sense, and pre-wrote an article, was Darnay Holmes from UCLA, like, oh, man, this would be great. This would be a perfect fit. He was the one who, when he was committing, had a little nephew who was pointing to the Ohio State hat, and then he picked UCLA, and he should have listened to his nephew, because UCLA football is nothing if not consistent.
You're right. UCLA football is nothing.
But he ended up going pro instead of entering he'd graduated, and it was like he was a potential grad transfer. It just made perfect sense, and then he turned pro instead. So, I think they would love to have someone, because I think the defensive backfield right now is in very much a similar spot to where the offensive line was last year. It was like, we can make it work with what we got right now, but if Jonah Jackson's out there and you can plug in a starter, like, that would be a lot better. And then you have a little more depth. You have a little more margin for error. If they can find another corner somewhere, they're gonna do that. But it's just a question of whether someone like that's out there.
Well, and they still may show up after spring graduations.
Sure.
Pop up to be a grad transfer. I don't expect it though, because it's Kendall Sheffield was about the best you can hope for as a transfer, and he came from JUCO, but he came from Alabama. And if players are leaving places, it's because they're not good enough to play there, generally. And
I mean, you can get someone who was a starting corner in the MAC, for example,
right,
who graduated
like a grad transfer,
and it wants to move up and play another at a better level. So that's a possibility. The last time I looked, there was no one out there that I went, oh yeah, that would be a good fit.
Mike Dana at Michigan last year was a grad transfer from Central Michigan who put up like 16 sacks at Central Michigan in his last year, and then goes to Michigan and maybe starts once, but comes off the bench and does really not much. And so, yeah.
I always think back to John Kerr, the linebacker, who was a freshman starter at Indiana and then transferred to Ohio State, and it was like, and he played, but I don't think he started, and he was fine. He was a contributor, but it's a big jump from Indiana to Ohio State, and it's an even bigger jump from Eastern Michigan to Ohio State.
The rare one was it Ryan Smith from Utah that came to Florida with Urban. Mm-hmm. He was like one of the first grad transfers to take part in this program, and he ends up starting and winning a national title at Florida, coming from Utah, which back then was a bigger jump than it would be now.
Yeah,
because
Utah was a Mountain West program back then. Yeah,
and so it's, if you can get something like that. But yeah, there are good grad transfers who are ready to play at the next level, being a Power 5 school.
Yeah, and there are a lot of names that are not in the portal yet. I mean,
exactly.
this time last year we were talking about quarterback possibilities and had heard that Gunnar Hoke was a strong possibility, but he wasn't in the transfer portal yet, so nothing was official. So there are undoubtedly people who are thinking about it or considering it or have decided they're going to do it but haven't put their name in there yet. So, to be determined.
Yep. And what the guys you would prefer are the graduates, not the guys who get beat out in spring and decide that, I'm going to go somewhere else because, well, they're not good enough to start there, but somehow they're good enough to start at Ohio State where, you should have one of the top 2 or 3 rosters in the game.
Yep.
So we will see. The better hope would just be like Tyreek Johnson step up, Marcus Williamson step up. Mm-hmm. And, maybe a guy like Lathan Ransom in the summer becomes a guy where, maybe he's a bullet because he's a bigger safety, but, he's still athletic, and Ryan Day has talked about how much he loves his athleticism. But Tom, still a lot of time to find all this stuff out.
Yeah, we will start having more information for you next week. I mean, and after next Monday's practice, I feel like we'll end up saying, we knew more than, I feel like we always have this. Mm-hmm. We know more than we knew at the beginning of the day. We don't know a lot, but it's a starting point.
Yeah.
And so the next month or so is kind of a process as the team walks through their spring practice, and we sort of learn progressively more as we go through. And then after spring ball, we'll go, well, this could go 3 different ways, but the season's still a long way away, but we'll have more information next week than we have this week.
Yeah. And what if like the linebackers, they all just fluctuate throughout the spring, and then, the questions remain like, will Baron Browning be at the Will in the summer and at the fall?
Yeah. There are also will be practices where it's like, wow, Taraja Mitchell starting at the mic. It's
exactly.
like, well, Baron Browning and Tuff Borland are both sitting out with extremely, extremely minor injuries. Yes. So no, he's not necessarily going to be the starter, but maybe.
But they'll also be in the first team just because, like, you've got a bunch of guys who don't need all of these reps.
And there's a lot of mixing and matching that goes on
definitely.
the first week or two of spring ball as well. That that they know there's a long way to go before the season. They don't need to have firm answers yet.
And when you see on Twitter Ryan Watts running with the ones, or this guy running with the ones, just relax.
It is factually correct. It is also potentially almost meaningless.
Yes, but we do love to tweet who is running with the ones. I just like saying running with the ones. Mm-hmm. I think it would be a good Eddie Money song. Running with the ones.
Why is running with the ones trending in Columbus? Well, Gert's just tweeting a lot.
Running with the ones. All right, Tom. That's going to do it for our defensive spring preview of the Ohio State Buckeyes. How do you think it went?
I think it went well. I think it'll go even better next week.
All right. So then we will talk to you guys next week. Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out all of the content at theozone.net. We've got all, there's spring stuff going on, and Monday, spring starts. Trees will bloom. Flowers will blossom. Trees may blossom as well.
Footballs will grow.
Footballs will grow because it is raining, as you may have heard throughout this show.
And we will have a special Patreon-only bonus show also coming out this week. It's our first Patreon audience request show. So if you subscribe at patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly, you can make us do stuff. So one of our audience members has made us do stuff. We are doing a show specifically based on a question that he asked and wanted us to talk about. So you can subscribe and make us dance at patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly.
All right, that'll do it. You guys have a good one.
Well, she threw away the motel.